He flaunted his mistress like a trophy, until his pregnant wife, a secret aviation tycoon, shattered his ego with one breathtaking move. But what she did next, no one, not even he, saw it coming. Stay with me. This story will shake your soul and inspire your heart. You will not believe how it ends. Before we begin this powerful story, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss an episode of our life-changing content. Like and share the channel to help us reach more hearts around the world. This is more than just storytelling. Each tale we share carries a deep moral lesson, designed to inspire, uplift, and help you grow. He boasted about his mistress, but his pregnant wife was a powerful aviation magnate. I used to think that power meant control. Control over people. Control over time. Control over love. At 32, I was already a billionaire. Tech stocks. Startups. Investments that soared. And an ego that flew even higher. My name is Ethan Vance. And back then, I was the kind of man who entered a room and expected silence. Respect. Admiration. And if I was honest, fear. I married her because she was beautiful. Grace in her walk. Silence in her pain. And the kind of intelligence that never needed to scream. Her name is Amira. She owned an aviation company before I even built my first app. Men in suits bowed to her in meetings. She designed jets. She negotiated with governments. She was never just my wife, she was a force. But I never truly saw her. I was too busy boasting. Too obsessed with my own reflection. Too shallow to notice her strength was not loud, it was deliberate. And when she got pregnant, I saw it as an inconvenience. Meetings could not wait. I traveled. I lied. And yes, I cheated. The woman I boasted about was younger. She laughed too easily. She fed my pride. She told me I was brilliant, even when I was careless. I thought I had it all. Until one December morning, Amira's assistant handed me a letter. A simple white envelope, sealed with her name. Inside it were ultrasound images of twin boys, and a note, written in the most composed handwriting. They will carry your name, but not your arrogance. I am no longer your shadow. I am light. She left. No screaming. No drama. Just silence and power. The media caught the story weeks later. Not about our divorce, but about her launching an aviation breakthrough, the world's first solar-powered passenger jet. From scratch. While 6 months pregnant. Her photo was on every magazine cover. Pregnant. Poised. Victorious. While I sat in my penthouse. Surrounded by glass walls and emptiness. And the echo of a woman I thought I had broken. But she had not broken. She had evolved. And me? I began to unravel. No calls from investors. Rumors spread. Stock prices dropped. My mistress left. My company turned its back. I stood at the edge of my empire, and it was crumbling. Then came the letter. From her. Again. A simple card. No anger. No blame. Just this. Real power is not in domination. It is in rebuilding what you destroyed, from the ground up. If you are ready, you will find us at the hangar, where you last looked at me like I was your equal. And that was the moment. My knees buckled. Not from grief, but from shame. I drove for hours. No driver. No suit. Just me in a hoodie, shaking, sweating, searching. I found her under the soft golden lights of the hangar. Her back turned. One hand on her swollen belly. Her other hand tracing the wings of a jet she designed herself. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came. No apology felt enough. No excuse sounded human. Then she turned and looked at me. And what she said next changed my life forever. She looked at me, not with hate, not with anger, but with something far more painful: disappointment. "I did not invite you here," she said calmly, "to hear you beg." Her voice was low but firm, balanced like the wings she built, with precision and purpose. "I invited you to choose." My throat tightened. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice cracking. She placed her hand gently on the curve of her belly. Her eyes didn't flinch. "You built towers," she said, "but never a home. You won awards," she continued, "but never earned trust. You loved the idea of being admired, but not the discipline it takes to be a man worthy of it." Each word struck me like wind against a shattered wing. I wanted to cry, but my pride, the same pride that had ruined everything, refused. Still, my eyes blurred, and in that blur I saw her, not as my wife, but as the woman I had never deserved. "Do you love them?" she asked, voice softening. The question sank like an anchor. I nodded, but she shook her head. "No," she said. "Do not answer with your head. Love lives in hands, in actions, in the hours you are present, in the days you show up without needing to be praised." She stepped closer, only inches away. "You will not buy their love, Ethan. Not with money, not with promises. You will earn it, if you are brave enough to become a man who serves, not demands." My hands trembled. My voice was barely a whisper. "Will you ever forgive me?" Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with a kind of strength that comes only after surviving emotional earthquakes. "Forgiveness," she said, "is not a gift I hand out. It is a path you walk, alone, step by step. And it does not end when you are tired. It begins when you finally understand why you are sorry." A long silence followed, the kind that swallows everything you once thought was important. And then, she turned away. Not to leave, but to walk toward the cockpit of the plane. "You still know how to build things," she said, looking back once. "Let us see if you are ready to build something that flies without crashing." She opened the door and stepped inside. The light spilled from within, warm, golden, hopeful. And for the first time in years, I did not feel like a billionaire. I felt like a man who had nothing. And yet, maybe for the first time, something worth becoming. I stood at the bottom of the stairs leading into the jet. My reflection shimmered on its sleek metallic body, a ghost of who I used to be. A man full of noise, now silenced by a woman's quiet truth. Each step I took felt heavier, not because of fear, but because of the weight of everything I had never seen, or chose not to. Inside, the hangar's cold air gave way to warmth. The scent of leather, faint traces of her jasmine perfume, and the hum of engines ready to awaken. She sat in the pilot's seat, focused, steady. I took the seat beside her. There were no guards, no boardrooms, no press, just her, and me, and the possibility of change. She handed me a folder. Inside were blueprints, charts, timelines, but not for a jet, for a project. One she had started years ago, for underprivileged youth in rural towns, teaching them engineering, aviation, innovation with compassion. "I wanted us to do this together," she said, still not looking at me. "You had the resources. I had the vision." My hands traced the edges of the folder, and I felt something I had long buried. Purpose. Not profit, but meaning. She turned to me, her voice low but firm. If you truly want to be a father, to them, and to something bigger than yourself, you will start by showing up here. Not once, but every week. You will lead. You will serve. And you will not speak of redemption. You will earn it. My throat burned. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to promise her everything. But I knew now, words had cost her too much already. So I nodded. She handed me a pen and pointed to the first page. Sign your commitment, she said. To them. To this. To something real. My hand trembled as I signed. It was not a business deal. It was the first line of a new life. As I finished, I looked at her. Really looked. She was more than the woman I once married. She was my mirror. My consequence. And maybe, if I was willing to break down every layer of ego, my guide. And then she said something I never expected. I never wanted to be your punishment, Ethan. I wanted to be your partner. But you must first learn how to be one. The engines whirred softly. Lights blinked to life. The hangar doors began to open. Night air poured in. Cool. Still. Full of quiet possibilities. And somewhere in the distance, a future waited. Not built on success, but on the courage to change. To rebuild. To love, not by claiming, but by giving. She looked at me. For the first time in what felt like years. Really looked. And in her eyes, I saw a flicker of something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. I wanted to reach for her hand. But I knew better now. This time, touch had to be earned, not assumed. The plane's control panel blinked softly between us. But there was no turbulence in the air. Only inside me. My voice finally broke the silence. Where do we begin? She turned her head slightly. Her lips curled, not into a smile, but into something gentler. Forgiveness in progress. By being present, she said. Not just in body, but in soul. In every room. With every choice. I looked at the folder again. Blueprints. Volunteer rosters. Sponsorship requests. Letters from students whose names I had never read before. And then, taped to the last page, a sonogram. Not printed, but the original. 2 tiny silhouettes. Floating close. Connected by something invisible and divine. My chest caved in with the force of it. They are real, I whispered. She nodded. They always were. Even when you were not. I leaned back in the seat. And for the first time in my life, I felt small. And it was the most human I had ever felt. I want to be better, I said. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Then start by being less. Less ego. Less noise. Less pride. So there is space for patience. For learning. For love that does not need applause to feel true. She rose from the pilot's seat. Walked past me slowly. Her presence, steady as sunrise. Before stepping off the jet, she paused. I will be at the center tomorrow morning at 7. You show up, not as Ethan Vance, the billionaire, but as the man who is willing to sweep floors if that is what it takes to begin again. She stepped into the night, leaving the scent of jasmine and jet fuel behind. I sat there long after the engines died, staring at the folder, the blueprints, the sonogram, and the seat she left behind. Still warm, still waiting, not for the man I was, but for the man I could become. And somewhere deep inside, I realized something. This story was no longer about what I had lost. It was about what I was still being given a chance to build. I did not go home that night. not to the penthouse with glass walls that echoed my emptiness. I drove to a cheap motel on the edge of the city. No valet. No concierge calling me sir. Just flickering neon and the hum of forgotten lives. Room 104 smelled of dust and old dreams. The mattress dipped in the middle. But it was the first time I slept without Ambien in over 2 years. Because for the first time, I was tired from feeling. I woke before dawn. Heart pounding. Mind racing. I looked in the cracked mirror. Unshaven. Eyes sunken. Suit jacket wrinkled from the floor. I looked nothing like Ethan Vance. And maybe that was the point. I arrived at the youth center just before 7. The building was old. Paint peeling. But the windows, wide, clean, and open. Like they had nothing to hide. Children were already gathering near the gates. Some wore oversized jackets. Some clutched notebooks like lifelines. And every one of them looked more alive than I had felt in years. Amira stood near the entrance. A clipboard in hand. Hair pulled into a loose braid. No makeup. No designer heels. Just purpose. She looked at me. No smile. But she nodded. You came. I did, I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. Then come inside, she said. We mop the floors before we teach the skies. I followed her. Each step a surrender. Each breath a reckoning. Inside, volunteers moved like clockwork. Setting up chairs. Unpacking lunchboxes. Wiping chalkboards. Amira handed me a broom. Simple. Wooden. Worn down by hands that worked harder than mine ever had. You start here, she said, and walked away. I stood there, frozen. Billionaire turned janitor. But this was no punishment. This was cleansing. So I swept. Not like a man doing penance, but like a man preparing a runway for someone else's flight. An hour passed. Then another. And slowly, I began to hear them. The laughter of children. The spark of possibility in their voices. The hum of machines. The crackle of old computers booting up. A boy walked past me with a paper plane in his hand. He stopped. Looked at me with bright eyes. You one of the teachers? He asked. I hesitated. Then crouched down. Not yet, I said. But I am here to learn. He smiled. Held out his plane. Wanna fly it with me? I took the plane. Felt the creases. The fragile folds. And threw it. Watched it soar across the hallway, wobbling slightly, but flying nonetheless. Just like me. Wobbling. But in motion. And from the far end of the corridor, I saw her. Amira. Watching. Not with doubt. But with something far more dangerous. Belief. That look in her eyes. Not warm, not cold. But measuring. Like she was quietly asking, will you stay this time? And for the first time in years, I knew my answer. Before my mind could wrap words around it. Yes. With everything I am still learning to become. The rest of the morning passed in slow, humbling tasks. I swept floors. Stacked chairs. Helped a teenage girl carry boxes of wires and old drone parts. To a workshop that smelled like metal and possibility. The students trickled in one by one. Each carrying their own weight. Some from poverty. Some from broken homes. All carrying something I had never dared to see until now. Dreams. That needed a place to take off from. At lunch, I sat alone in the courtyard. Rust-colored benches. Birds pecking at breadcrumbs. Sunlight cutting through the cracks in the concrete. And then she came. Holding a paper cup of tea. She placed it in front of me. Did not speak. just sat down beside me like no time had passed. But everything had changed. "I watched you today," she said. I nodded, unsure of what I had proven. "You did not talk much," she added. "I have said too much in my life," I replied, "and listened too little." That made her smile. Barely. But it was there, like sunlight peeking through after days of rain. "Do you remember when I told you I was pregnant?" she asked suddenly. My chest tightened. "Yes." "You said it quietly. Over breakfast. In between emails." She nodded slowly. "You never looked up from your phone." I lowered my head. A sting behind my eyes. I was a fool. "No," she said. "You were just empty." That word. It cut deeper than insult. Because it was true. "I wanted to fill you," she whispered. "With love. With life. But I learned, you cannot pour yourself into someone with holes." The silence between us ached. Until she placed her hand on the table. Open. Steady. Not asking. Just offering. I placed mine gently over hers. Rough. Shaking. But honest. And she did not pull away. "You want to teach these kids how to build drones, Ethan?" she asked softly. "I want to teach them how to believe in what they build," I answered. "Then start by believing in yourself. But not the version they put on magazine covers. The one sitting here now. With nothing left to prove, only something to give." The paper cup of tea sat between us. Steam rising. A small, shared warmth. Then her voice dropped, almost a whisper. "They kick for me, you know. The twins. Whenever I speak about you." I closed my eyes. Tears spilling before I could stop them. She squeezed my hand. And for the first time, I did not feel forgiven. I felt invited. Into a life I had nearly lost. Into a purpose I had never known. Into a family I had not yet earned. But was finally ready to fight for. The months that followed were not easy. Change never is. I showed up every morning. Before sunrise. Not as the founder of a billion-dollar empire. But as a man rebuilding from the inside out. I taught workshops. Cleaned classrooms. Missed deals. But gained something far greater. I learned the names of every student. Listened to their stories. Watched their eyes light up when they made things fly. I watched myself become smaller. And more whole because of it. Amira never rushed the process. She stood back. Let me stumble. Let me rise. And over time, she stood beside me again. Our sons were born on a windy March morning. Two perfect, breathing reminders of what I almost lost, and what I was still becoming. When I held them, I wept. Not because I was afraid, but because, for the first time in my life, I was ready. I did not boast. I did not post photos. I did not broadcast their birth to the world. Instead, I whispered promises into their tiny ears. That I would show up. That I would be real. That I would love their mother not with words, but with truth. And I kept that promise. Not because I owed it, but because I finally understood what it meant to love without possession. To lead without pride. To serve without shame. Amira and I, we never went back to what we were. We built something better. Not perfect, but honest. We merged our visions. Created a foundation. A fleet of solar learning jets. Taking education to children in places too far for roads. But never too far for hope. And every time we flew, I sat behind her in the cockpit. No longer needing to be the one in front. Because true leadership is knowing when to follow. Moral lesson. Success means nothing if it costs you your soul. Love cannot survive without humility. And the people who challenge you to grow are often the ones who save you. Sometimes, losing everything is the beginning of becoming something. Choose to become more. Choose to be less, so you can give more. That is how we learn to fly. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it moved you, share it, comment below, and let someone know. You are never alone.